Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's SLSO Stories live event. If you're familiar with our Lunch and Learn series from last season, you are in the right place. We've simply broadened the scope of these conversations and put them under the new heading of Stories Live. These virtual events let us go deep with musicians and experts on a specific topic. I'm Tim Munro, creative partner with the SLSO, and today we have a really special event getting an inside look into how musical friendships form with music director Stefan Denève and amazing guest artist Nikolaj Szeps-Znaider. But first, a housekeeping thing. Please do ask questions using the chat function. Make sure your message is set to both panelists and attendees. It's going to be such a joyful hour with two amazing, delightful musicians and humans. And I'm going to get to as many audience questions as I can along the way. Ask about music, about life, about friendship, and these two wonderful gentlemen. Special thanks to the SLSO's 2021-2022 SLSO Stories Live sponsor, Washington University Physicians. And now I'm delighted to welcome Stefan Denève and Nikolaj Szeps-Znaider. Welcome to both of you.
Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you.
So, Nikolaj, in an interview, I heard you describe Stefan as your cuddly French big brother. And I want to start off by talking about the origins of your sort of musical and personal friendship. Maybe we can start with you, Nikolaj. What is your first memories of meeting Stefan, and do you remember about that original spark?
Yes. Well, first of all, good evening to you, to everyone. I think it's the first time somebody had to clarify that I was a human, but you know, we'll take it. And then I just want to say that if I seem a little bit under the weather, it's because I am under the weather. I have a slight fever, but nothing scary, and I should be more than fine by next week.
And you're not contagious over Zoom. You're not contagious over Zoom.
Well, I do think I have a case of Zoomitis, so it might go through Zoom. You might want to hide. All joking aside, it is great to be here, and I remember very well. We actually spoke about it, Stefan and I, not long ago, about the first time we met, because it was a while ago, and we were I should say younger than now. We still feel young, at least, but we were much younger. It must be what, almost 20 years ago, no, Stefan? 18, yep. 19 years ago, something like that. And I remember clearly that my then agent said, you know, this is wonderful young conductor, and he would like to meet with you the day before for Tchaikovsky concertos. Meet with me the day before for Tchaikovsky concerto. Who meets the day before for Tchaikovsky concerto, you know? And he said, yeah, but just go, because he's a very, very good conductor, and he's very nice, and he's very, you know. I said, okay. So I go, and from the first moment, I think we shared a sort of similar curiosity about music, and I would say that it was kind of instantaneous. I remember the whole seance with rehearsals and concerts was quite special, and then we bonded immediately. And then, you know, within the next couple of years, you know, it takes a while with what we do, because you don't live in the same place. So until you've established what you could truly call a friendship, you know, it takes a few years until you've met enough. And then, you know, since then we've just stayed in close contact and gone through. It's like every other friendship, is the more things you go through together, the more shared experiences, tours and difficult moments and easy moments and joyful moments, the closer you get. And I'm very grateful for this very deep friendship.
Oh, thank you. You see the waves of love already trying to cure your Zoomitis. I do remember, yes, I'm an annoying conductor indeed, because I actually, what he doesn't know is I should have called that the dinner test, because I usually try to actually find out when I meet somebody if I can engage in the in a friendly way. But so often my strategy is to have indeed a rehearsal the day before, and usually the soloists arrive in town, you know, quite late in the day, so you can actually have a rehearsal first, and then that's very optional. If there is a good feel, then we can continue and celebrate our first meeting, which I think we did that time in Basel, in Swiss. But in the case of
I see, Stefan. So it's a tactic. I didn't know this until now.
It became.
I felt special, you know, those days. But okay. Okay.
It became a tactic after you, because it was so successful with you, you know, that's why. And no, indeed, I do remember extremely well the first time I saw Nikolai, and I was an anonymous, actually, a member of the audience. It was earlier than that. It was in Paris, and he was touring with the Stockholm Philharmonic Orchestra and Alan Gilbert, and he was playing Prokofiev 2. And actually, I think you won the Queen Elizabeth competition not so many years before, right? Which year was it that you won?
1997.
Exactly. And so he was a big sensation, of course. I mean, everybody knew his name. He was a star. I was absolutely nobody. And he arrived on stage, and I won't tell you who, but there was a friend of mine, a pianist at the time, that was at the concert. And this pianist actually suffers, unfortunately, from stage fright. And he saw Nikolai arrive on stage, and he said, like, oh, I'm so jealous. He just has no stage fright at all. And it was very clear that you, Nikolai, arrive on stage like grand seigneur, we say in French, and you played, you know, the Prokofiev 2, sol, si, re, mi, do, re, sol, si, re. And the quality of the sound, it was really like the sound, like the big sound, the one we love, that is just so intense, so, you know, the closest way from the heart to another one. And I was very impressed by this concert, and so I was definitely dreaming to make music with him, and it happened. And yes, we discussed Tchaikovsky in big details, and already there, by the way, his attitude to music was not only the one of a soloist. He was already a conductor, because he was already knowing by heart everything of the score, the full orchestra score. And we could discuss some structural things in Tchaikovsky, which are fantastic. And I could feel that he had you know, an overview of this masterwork. And indeed, that's thanks to music that we started to bond and become friends.
Oh, I love that. That's so beautiful. Nikolai, you've actually talked about the difference in sort of mentality between a soloist and a conductor, and we'll talk a bit about the two different roles a little bit later on. But do you feel like you have to shift between those two as you get off the podium and onto the podium? You've said that a soloist mentality is sort of detail first, and that a conductor mentality is sort of big picture first.
Well, I would say that that's more to do with the way one approaches new repertoire. And when I talked about that, it is simply the practicality of playing an instrument. When you begin learning a piece, you start with the first note and the second note and the third note, and so forth, until you manage to work your way through the piece. But you can't really do it that way when you conduct, because when you have to absorb new repertoire, you don't have to play the notes. So of course, you will eventually, later on, it makes sense to make your analysis, harmonic analysis, which means reading what harmonies are playing, reading vertically, you know, all the instruments at the same time. But really, from when it comes to learning a new piece, it is advisable to learn first the large structure, and then zoom in indeed on the smaller details. But the actual, as you say, shifting between the two, I mean, yes, there's a different function. Most notably, the difference is the relationship with sound, which is either very direct when playing or indirect when conducting. And also when conducting, much more, because it's indirect, attuned to what each individual member of the orchestra is doing, whereas when you play as a soloist, you're responding to the organism, the entire orchestra. Of course, some big solos, of course, that's the thing. But with time, I would say the main difference in feeling is a physicality. You know, there's just muscles and tendons that need to move, and that require, you know, some athleticism and training and daily routine to be able to navigate those difficult pieces. But the approach itself, as Stefan was hinting at, I never felt I shifted. You know, it was more like learning a different way of expressing it, a different discipline, but within the same objective. I don't feel like it's doing something else. It's just a different function doing something else. It's still all music.
And to go back to something that you were mentioning before, just as a musical friendship feels a lot like an actual, a human relationship. That I was asking some of the members of the SLSO what it is like to have deep musical friendships. Build up trust over time. And one thing that one of the members said was that it allows for more risks, more danger. I wonder, maybe Stefan, you can take this. Do you feel like there's a trust that you and Nikolai and like other close musical friends that you build up where somehow being on stage you feel like more able to take risks?
Well, I should start by saying that with Nikolai there is always risks.
Oh.
From the start, even now, he's a dangerous man. And actually, before I answer you, I will speak about dangerous. I have to say that, of course, Nikolai is a dear friend, and we speak about him often with my wife. And we remembered one horrible story. If you may, I will reveal it. Nikolai, about being dangerous. We were actually having concert in a festival in Napa Valley, and we were lucky enough to be in a beautiful hotel with a pool, and it's a summer festival. So we were lounging, on a pool, and my wife and Nikolai, being both Scandinavians, actually, they can speak not exactly the same language, but close enough. Danish and Swedish are pretty similar, if I may say, and. At some point, actually, they wanted to just lounge even more, and my wife tried to help to move this fancy big lounge chair or whatever. And at some point, something just closed quickly, and the full chair closed, and Nikolai has his four fingers just out of the chair, and I'm still shocked now, and my wife too, actually, at the fact that if that went wrong, we would have a conductor from much earlier. Do you remember that, Nikolai?
I do remember. You get lucky sometimes in life.
Oh my God. Oh, when thinking about it, I'm still getting red. But anyway, to come back to your musical question, sorry. It is very sure that in music, when you have a friendship, I think when you feel a friendship, which for me is very important on stage, there is a phenomenon that you want to please each other. I always after a concert ask, like, tell me what can I do better, like what did I really do wrong or whatever, because I just want to do something more, and the great thing is then we can have this kind of freedom on stage to search together and to just respond to each other. So there are indeed some private looks, and we, if I'm just like a little bit late or something, and I see Nikolai just adjusting to me and say, like, be careful or something, and then so there will be some kind of complicity, I would say, in what's happening, which makes that the dialogue is present during the music making, and that is very precious and very special, of course, with Nikolai, because another compliment, Nikolai, because he's so mastering the concerto that you never feel that is, concentrated in whatever technical aspect and closing, like a U-boat going into the virtuosity, is always able to stay in contact and be aware of any details that happen. And this is incredible. I think he could pilot AX380 on the same time as playing Sibelius.
Well, if I could, that would be interesting, because I can't do it without playing Sibelius, so it would be very impressive. I could do it while playing. But but I think just to add to that, because of course Stefan is right, but it goes, I think, not only with the friendship but with trust. And it goes with trust also of having been through many different pieces together, many different situations where we know we can trust each other. And I know if I do something, I know Stefan is reacting. I know he's so alert and creating with. That's what I look for when actually, if I conduct, I'm looking for that with the soloist. If I play, looking for that with the conductor. This idea that the solo part is never an island that exists, in a vacuum by itself, but something that constantly interacts with everything else that goes on around it, and that requires very, very refined antennas, and that I always felt that we felt from the first time. No, I think, Stefan, that we had this kind of contact, and that's the most magical thing, is when you can communicate without talking. You can even do it with your eyes closed. It's amazing, this action and reaction, reaction and adjusting to each other and creating something. Because I mean, if you play an instrument, you will know this. But what is so extraordinary about music is, we do think of the great works as monuments. I certainly do, monuments of humanity. Mankind has created these extraordinary monuments. But unlike the Notre Dame, which did burn down, but so maybe bad example, but other great monuments of humanity, this one is not something you can travel to see. It's something that exists in a brief period of time and never in exactly the same form or shape twice. And that's a magical thing. But in order to make that happen, you need partners. You can't do that alone. You need an alert orchestra, you need an alert partner, whether it's a conductor when you play or soloist when you conduct. So the main thing is to have that approach, and if both the two protagonists, the soloist and the conductor, have that approach to music making, then indeed something special can happen. That's what I felt we were always looking for. You have to know that we always look for it. It's not always we find it, but that's not important, because it's in that search, in that looking for the special moments that the magic lies. It's actually in getting close to an idea. It's not arriving, because we will never arrive to the idea, but it's in getting close that we feel the magic, and hopefully you too.
I love that. I mean, it makes me think how much I'm realizing that that's true for life also, that it's about the journey, it's about the search. Since we are talking about searches and so many different concertos, I was trying to total up the number of concertos you both have worked on together, but I wonder if there are special highlights from the past.
Yes,
Stefan?
many. Sorry to jump on it, but because what the trust and friendship can do too, which is great, is that we challenge each other, and I'm very, very, very grateful that Nikolai actually said you should learn the Elgar Concerto, you should learn the Nilsson Concerto. And I was virgin for both of them until we performed together. And those two, by the way, are quite tricky concertos for a conductor. They're both very long, and they're both unusual and have their own challenges. And I must say that was really, I mean, I think Nilsson was in San Francisco, I suppose, and Elgar was in Philadelphia. So I was lucky to have, of course, terrific orchestras to learn this piece on their back, I'm afraid. But it was really very special for me to be learning such a masterwork with Nikolai, because the first time is always an important time, and that way I could be just steered into the right path, and that was very special to me. But it's true that we did many concertos and we did many tours. I was Nikolai. I was actually just half an hour before this meeting online. I was just checking. Do you know that we played together in more than 10 countries, in France, in Germany, in Belgium, in Spain, in Russia, in Romania, in England, in Scotland, in USA, in Canada. I forget Netherlands, by the way, I just noticed now. And we performed together at Carnegie Hall, at the Berlin Philharmonic, in Edinburgh Usher Hall, in Philadelphia, San Francisco, in Paris, the radio, in London, in, my God, soon in Cleveland, by the way, and I can't wait to finally do our debut together as a, I almost said couple, sorry, as a duet in St. Louis. You've been conducting the orchestra, but this time you will not only conduct the orchestra, you will also play with me there, and I'm very glad to be your first conductor in St. Louis as well.
I'm touched. It's so sweet, and everything that Stefan says is right, and it's a testament to both, I think, the depth of our friendship, but also to the musical relationship we have. And you know, they are certainly separate. You know, I'm sure we would be great friends without, but with music, it becomes even that much more strong. I would maybe mention, thank you for speaking so highly of the Nielsen and Elgar experiences. Let's do it again. And and I remember a lot of beautiful Beethovens. We did Brahms, etc., etc. But I want to perhaps mention a beautiful, or maybe more than beautiful, maybe a humorous story to one of the concerts that made it very, very memorable, which had nothing to do with the playing itself or the music itself, but had to do with the before. And I can't remember where. I think we were going on tour. Was the last concert in a tour, but we were in Stuttgart at the time when Stefan and Osa worked there. And somebody had a bright idea. Let's go find the go-kart ring and go go-karting before the concert. I thought this is a phenomenal idea. But you see, they are both so reckless drivers that I was, you know, really far behind everyone. And I remember at one point, I can't remember if it was Stefan or Osa, somebody said, you shouldn't brake, you know, just go in the
My wife,
turn.
I blame my wife.
Yeah, she said, just go, you know, you don't brake before the turn, just go. So I thought, okay, well, you know, she seems to be doing well. So I went full speed and tried to turn, but I slammed into the wall, which sounds funny and sort of was funny until I had to play that night, and I realized my shoulder was very sore. So that's a kind of a funny thing, you know. We weren't great friends, you know. Maybe if you were a violinist too, I thought maybe you would sabotage my concert, but no, it was just a funny thing that happened. And that was Tchaikovsky, by the way, which is one of the hardest pieces to play. But I think the concert was all right at the end, wasn't it, Stefan?
It was more than all right. I remember you showing me before that you were a little bit trembling.
That's
like,
right.
Yeah, and I was like, I felt so guilty, and I felt guilty for two reasons. First, because I mean, you know, it was stupid to do that so close to the concert, the morning of the concert, and I was so guilty as well because I beat you so badly that day. And you know, those go-kart things are actually weight dependent, right? I mean, and I'm afraid I'm heavier than Nikolai, so I should have lost. But anyway.
It makes me wonder whether you ever feel on stage like you're going around a corner without the brakes. Are there any moments on stage? I mean, obviously not in physical danger, but where you feel that way? I mean, either together or on your own?
Well, I mean, ideally one has to know what one is doing. The danger shouldn't become from recklessness, you know. It shouldn't be from, oh my God, we're doing something so outrageous that it might fall apart. It shouldn't be from that. The danger is more the element of that unspoken dialogue we talked about before, where one says, you know what, I'm going with this idea, and counting on the other person to realize it in time. So it's more a matter of, it's funny because you're bringing out something, or we need to talk about something that's very, very difficult with both conducting and playing. And that is the fact that the brain has to perform many different tasks simultaneously, you know, because being reckless is not a solution without knowledge. You know, the sense of danger you talk about, of doing something uncalculated, only ever has a chance of succeeding if that is founded in knowledge. The freedom, in other words, only comes from not from planning everything you might want to do, but from truly knowing and understanding the material. So, but at the same time, you do have to have a feeling of being completely free in the moment, and that's what's very, very difficult. And that's why that calibration of the brain, you know, that it has to do, how many percent, you can't, of course, put it that way, but, you know, a certain percentage of your attention has to be on, you know, making sure nothing disastrous happens, anticipating danger. Another has to be in creating in the moment. Another has to be simply in listening to, you know, what comes next. You have to listen ahead, but you also have to listen in reverse. You have to memorize what didn't go well so that you can fix it to the next time. There's a lot of things that the brain has to do at the same time, and at the same time, you as the audience should never feel that, because neither in a perfect performance situation, neither should we. But it's very hard to do, of course.
What I feel sometimes is more, it's not really that aspect of virtuosity or recklessness. It's more the aspect of sometimes what we say in French, which I love the word. I don't think there is an equivalent, lâcher prise. It's when you kind of abandon yourself, you let it happen somehow. And this is this moment which has no gravity, where suddenly it just happens. And, you know, I mean, there is a beautiful saying that if you love each other and you are hand in hands, if you love each other enough, you just don't know who is leading, but you go in the same direction. And that's actually what happens with music at its best. It's like suddenly, if you let it go, and somehow it gets together in the same place, and you just kind of let it happen. And this is indeed a very strange thing, because it doesn't mean that you are like losing control, or you are totally like dreaming or something. You're actually almost the opposite. You are even in a moment of ultra awareness somehow. And so you are in the same flow of the music, because you're aware of the music and you're aware of all the energy that makes the music together. And that is actually really a very special thing that happened or not. But when it does, it's amazing, and it feels both risky and unrisky. It's just, you know, it's just obviousness, something like that. Difficult to put into words, sorry.
Well, I mean, that's why you guys take the stage and don't have to talk about it. You just do it. I mean, it is that kind of magic. All of this talk of sort of freedom within limits makes me really think about, like, my son is in a Montessori program at the moment. And one of the things about Montessori is to set up the environment very strictly so that they can then have freedom. And that predictability of the space allows them total freedom in their mind. And I love that sense. It's influenced the way that I think a lot in the last year. And I love that this sort of seems to almost feed into that. Nikolai, I wanted to talk about your incredibly dense 2 weeks with the SLSO that's coming up. And first of all, Stefan was mentioning the concerto by your compatriot, Carl Nielsen. And I wonder if we can start off by talking about a concerto by another Nordic composer, Jean Sibelius. There's actually a question in the chat that I'll ask you about the Sibelius Concerto. The technical challenges are well known, but what do you see as the big interpretive challenges, and how does your trust help smooth them out as friends?
Well, I mean, the trust means that we don't have to. Well, I would say it means that we don't have to talk about it. We talk about it, Stefan and I, because we actually enjoy. We had a wonderful talk last week. I was conducting in Chicago, and I can't remember where Stefan was, but we had a talk about Schumann all of a sudden, and about the interpretative complexities of Schumann, and it was very, very illuminating to have someone like that to talk about. So we might choose to talk about it because it's interesting, but we could equally just go to the rehearsal and start talking without words, as we said. You know, it wouldn't be strictly necessary. For me, the piece, the difficulty of the piece is it seems like I always say it seems like it's carved out of one big rock. You know, it has that kind of naturalistic, very visceral feel, something you can touch, something tangible, but at the same time something vast. It seems to me big. The landscape seems, you know, to use that metaphor, seems vast, seems long. The way it starts already, I feel like it's somebody looking very, very far. You know, you have this a feeling of endlessness somehow, or space. And I think that's the difficulty, how to achieve that without it becoming heavy, because that's two different things. How does it remain dynamic? And that always has to do with a feeling of forward momentum. Music does start, and in the sense of time, it moves inexorably, as Isaac Stern said it beautifully, towards the end, and it should have that feeling. You do have space, of course, within that movement, but again, as you said yourself, there is a framework. It has to stay inside the frame. Inside that, you have your freedom, but always with the feeling of something moving towards an end, and that's always the balance to keep in any piece. But I feel it very strongly with the Sibelius. It must have that feeling of forward momentum. Even the slow second movement, which is of course emotionally the central part of this concerto, extraordinarily deep, and yet we have to find a way to, with that space, with the broad. I used to play it when I was younger, very, very slow. But with age, well, or maybe in different phases of one life, one feels it differently. And I'm curious because I haven't, you know, obviously because of the whole lockdown, I haven't played it as frequently in the last, I don't think I've played it since the lockdown. So I will be very curious to see. Again, I don't plan it in advance. I have a feeling I might not feel it quite as broad, but I don't know it yet. But that's what I'm looking forward to finding out.
But in fact, I agree with you, Nikolai, that there is a feeling of inexorability in this very organic concerto, and therefore the tempo giusto, the tempo is essential, and it's almost like the right heartbeat. You have just to be in the right heartbeat. And I find, for me, as a conductor, this concerto, it sounds like nothing, but actually it's very important to start it at the right pace. Like, you know, you have the beginning, and obviously the soloist can still take the tempo he or she wants. And that reminds me another anecdote actually that just come to my mind. Do you remember in Edinburgh, we were in the dressing room, and you were doing a lot of martial arts at the time, because it's very sporty, very powerful. You know, I told you it's, you know, it's dangerous, man. And actually, and I said, I played with him. I said, like, so what tempo do you want? And then he did a kind of kick with his leg, and he's like, my tempo, your tempo. You remember this? So our tempo now, after so many years, it will be our tempo. But in any case, the second movement too, you know, I mean, it starts with and even the third movement is famous. It's so essential to just capture the tempo giusto that will give this feeling that it has space, yet it moves forward. And this is very strange. This is like somebody permanently leaning, you know, but never falling. You know, this very strange feeling that you look at, you know, if you were on the top of a tower or on a cliff, and you of course don't want to fall, but you want to still embrace the landscape. And so a little bit like the, you know, at Rio de Janeiro, you know, the famous sculpture, you feel like you have to embrace everything, yet
you have to lean into the wind, kind of. You have to lean into the wind. You have to have a forward pressure. And it's funny because each of the movement, now you mentioned yam pakadam pakadam in the third movement, but the first movement starts with again repetitive figure. Second movement has yam bam 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 bam. So all three movements have this feeling of repeated figures that has that forward momentum. And it's funny, you were talking about how the violin is integrated. It's kind of very ambiguous. It doesn't even begin with these two notes, right? It's like very ambiguous because the violins are playing against each other. So one is playing at the same time, and if everything goes well, they don't end up playing at the same time, and then it should sound like the same note, just shifting timbre, shifting color. It's very hard to do, by the way, but it's interesting because it's not really a beginning, and yet it doesn't get to go anywhere before the violin already enters. But it's interesting because of those two notes, the violin enters on neither, but rather on the note in between the two notes. So it really linked. It is really very tightly woven, the whole piece.
So both of you are bringing up such evocative images, both of something organic and something tied to nature. It makes me wonder, Nikolai, if you feel like, as someone from a Nordic country, that there's like a special relationship you might have with works from that part of the world.
I don't know. It's such a dangerous thing to say, isn't it? Because then we are one step away from fascism. To say that you have to be a certain kind of nationality to play or feel or understand the kind of a music. I mean, it's not wrong in the sense that we always try to learn more, right? We try to read about the composers. We try to understand the environment, socially, historical context, to know as much as possible, to get close. And why do we do that? We do that only to help us get to what's behind the notes, right? And that's where it might not be wrong what you say, that there is a certain kinship you can feel with a kind of a music which is inexplicable. But for me, I think it has had less to do with geography or history, and simply, and the older I get, the more I feel comfortable saying it, is an emotional response. And the way I feel it now is that the very first reaction we must have to any kind of music is emotional. We have to listen to it. We have something, it tells us something, we feel it strongly. Then we go through an endless process of analysis, study, trying to get deep, learning about the composer, the context, when was the work written, etc., etc. But the final gesture as well on stage, again, needs to be emotional. It needs to be spoken from the heart. It's not an academic exercise in the end, and therefore it's hard to say. I feel very close with the Sibelius Concerto, not with everything Sibelius wrote, but with the Concerto certainly. Does that have to do with whether I grew up in Denmark? That's hard. I don't know. It's hard to say, because I also like music written by people who were from Italy or Austria, Bohemia. So it's hard to say, but I will say that there's certain music that I feel resonates with me stronger or less strong.
There is a Rachmaninoff who said, "What is music?" And then he says, like, music comes from the heart and appeals only to the heart. It is love. And then he said, "The sister of music is poesy, and its mother is sorrow." Voilà.
I mean,
on this note,
it's never more beautifully expressed. Nikolai, you're coming as a soloist and you're coming as a conductor, but you're also coming to St. Louis as a chamber musician. And I wonder if you can talk about I don't know how you would have time to play chamber music these days, but what role chamber music plays in your life?
Well, not enough, last week I played some chamber music simply for pleasure with some friends in Chicago, and it was wonderful. You know, it's something growing up as an instrumentalist that one does a lot of and should. And there's little in this world that gives me more pleasure than sitting and playing quartets or trios or quintets. I'll tell you something funny. My longtime mentor, one of them, was Colin Davis. He did so much for me, and I learned so much from him. And I remember I asked him at one point. I said, "Is there anything I could do? You know, is there anything that I can do for you?" Because he'd done so much for me in every way. You know, both in terms of inviting me to play, but also just listening to all my questions and being a real mentor. And I remember he said, "I would love it if one time you would come to my house and I would cook curry and you would play chamber music with my children." And I said, "I would love to." And it meant that much to him. It was the one thing that he thought that could bring him joy. And we had a wonderful afternoon. I remember he invited Mitsuko Ushida as well, the great pianist, and we played, all of us, string quartets and string quintets and piano quartets, piano quintets. And there's really very little in this world that's more gratifying, more satisfying, more fulfilling than making music, especially with people you care about. And if you know that's the most special thing you want to do. Yes, eat and drink and be together, but making music together, that's something special.
There is something that we never achieved, Nikolai, but we spoke about it because long time ago, so when, for instance, the first time we did the Sibelius, I play at the piano. I reduce the orchestra score and I play with Nikolai, you know, to just have the first feeling. And actually, it happens that Nikolai is also a pianist, and so we thought at some point, like, it would be great if actually we do a full thing. Like, he conducts, I play a concerto. I conduct, he plays the violin. I conduct, he plays the piano, and then we do, without conductor, a double piano concerto. I mean, like, you know, we could vary the pleasures, I would say, together. That would be great.
You know, we should do. Is there a piano on stage? No, not for the Sibelius.
No, for Shostakovich 5 on the second part. So there will be maybe. Yeah, you want to play something?
As an encore.
Yeah.
What would you play?
What would you play?
Let's see. Well, my favorite is the Debussy Sonata, but it's a bit long as an encore.
I think people would be so happy. I think
I'll work on the maestro. I'll work on the maestro. See if I can't convince him.
I love it. That's so beautiful. Well, I also want to touch on the program that you'll be conducting, Nikolai. And it seems like there's a very deep kind of connection to a sense of home in that program. Can you talk a little bit about the programming for that concert?
Sure. So despite me being born in Scandinavia, I feel that where I became a kind of a grown-up, if you will, a musician, or came of age, was in Central Europe, and somehow the music that really speaks to me is from Central Europe. Now, Central Europe is very broad because it goes all the way around the Alps, doesn't it, into France and Italy, and you know. But there's a certain way of making music around there that speaks very, very strongly to me. That indeed I feel home in a musical way, and one of the pieces that I love doing that is fabulously exciting and beautiful and funnily enough unknown, except the second tone poem, is the My Vlast, My Homeland by Smetana, which is a wonderful piece. One of the first, in a good sense of nationalism, you know, when Europe was coming together in nation states in the middle of the 19th century. This was one of the first artistic expressions of that, or musical expressions, I should say, of that yearning. and put into music in an absolutely extraordinary way. I find it to be really a fascinating piece that has a big impact on everyone who hears it, and I'm very, very happy to bring it to St. Louis.
And you'll also be performing a work by Karim Alzand that's in a different way about home.
That's right.
Is there a sense in which music can be a sort of political statement? Well,
music can be whatever you want it to be, but music itself, the notes itself, again, because of what we said before, speak to you directly, speaks to the listener directly. It can mean whatever it means to that person. It's very, very subjective. Of course, you can attach a meaning to it, or a program that has been done, since Liszt in absolute music, or before that in liturgical music, of course. But music as such, you could take any piece of music with whatever meaning it has, and it could mean something different, 10 different things to 10 different people listening to the same thing, because we all bring something different into the listening experience, don't we? We all come from different emotional situations, surroundings, etc., etc. So it's I think it's dangerous to say that music has inherent in it some kind of political message or meaning, but that it can have been written with that intention doesn't take away from it, and as in this particular piece, can be indeed a very touching element of listening to it when we know it.
I'm personally sure that music in itself, which is vibration in the air and communication through sound, can never have a political message in itself, and can never be fascist, for instance, and therefore that's the reasoning why I think you can always not play a piece because you disagree with the political views of a composer, and you decide to say, when the composer is alive, you decide to say, like, I cannot defend the man behind the music, I'm not performing this music. But when the composer is dead, then the music, he or her music, belongs to humanity, and it becomes just an art form. And then I think it's very healthy to actually disconnect this music from whatever context, political context of the time, political context of the composer, and just decide if this music can be love, can be actually an expression of humanity, and speak to people, and make us together. And so voilà, that's my only little theory about what to do with the meaning of music. Music in itself, it's only music.
Yeah, that's beautiful, beautifully put. So just we have a few minutes left, and there's a question in the chat from Mary about life and your touring lives. She says that she has found in reading about figures in popular music and athletics that the life of travel, of seeking to please and exceed, became very stressful and led to life issues. The question is whether you're able to keep your lives on an even keel. I wonder, Nikolai, I read in an interview you talking about the kind of almost like a life of exile, like a self-chosen life of exile, whether it's possible to like have a touring life, a busy touring life, and stay healthy, or stay, I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think that was made, in a specific context, or in response to a specific question. I certainly, when I was younger, I felt kind of at home everywhere and nowhere at the same time. I mean, not linked particularly to a geographical space. I would say there's three places I feel at home, and it's with my family, and it's in nature, and it's in music. Those are the three times I feel at home, but they don't have to be in a specific national state. Yeah, I mean, I think for me is since becoming a father and having children, I think that actually really has put things, it sounds such a cliche, but it put things in perspective. And I remember thinking, wow, but when, before I thought, well, isn't that must be dangerous in a way, because, music was always the most important thing. And I thought, wow, it must take something away from music somehow. But the same way, you don't have less love for your second child or third child, but the love just multiplies. It's exactly the same thing. In other words, I feel like I feel more strongly. Yes, there's less time, but that's the case for everyone with children. But the sense of feeling more keenly, feeling more aware, and at the same time being upon my return at home, very, very aware that I have no awe striking effect on my children at all. It's very, very healthy. And if anything should keep me even keeled, it's that. It's returning to those little people who need me, but see me as nothing else than what they should.
I love that. Stefan, you have a little person also.
Yes, actually, may I reveal that we share a child with the same name? Nikolai, that's okay for you?
Well,
actually,
too late now.
Both of us, Nikolai and me, we both have a little Alma. He has more children than me. Good for him, but we share that, which is very touching. And what was very nice, by the way, is to over the years. I mean, when we met, it was before we met our partners and fiancés, then wives, and so we saw all the stage of life that you go through. And I can't resist to share. I don't know if you remember this photo, Nikolai. Look at this playboy here. Do you see that?
Wow.
My wife.
But we were so young.
You see that? It's funny. And yes, we can see the difference. This is definitely 20 years ago almost.
But that's humbling.
Yeah. And no, I mean, there is always a reverse side of the medal. So we have a wonderful life. I mean, it's fantastic. We make music, we bring joy, we bring beauty to this world. I mean, that's a privilege. The price to pay, you said it, is to be just often without the family. So that is not easy. It got better now, actually, with technology. I mean, we can, I often sit at the table of my family as in 2D, which is maybe a better thing for me, on an iPad, and thanks to Zoom or to Skype, for instance. So now it's less difficult. I mean, I can only imagine what it was 50 years ago, when there was almost no way to call, no way to get in touch really easily from far away. So now it's much easier, but it's still a price to pay. You just want to kiss goodnight to your child, and you cannot every day. But apart from that, I have to say I feel exactly the same as Nikolai. I feel like we have three homes, musicians, and it's not linked to any country. I mean, we make music everywhere. We travel all the time, and we feel, the different character of the countries. We speak different languages. It's we are definitely world travelers and world inhabitants, and everywhere where there is music, it's our home.
So beautifully said. And we so look forward to having both of you travel the world to come to St. Louis. I want to thank you so much for your time, Stefan and Nikolai, and particularly Nikolai, feeling under the weather, really, to continue through with this. I really appreciate your time.
You're my hero. You're my hero, Nikolai. Thank you.
Everything for you, friend. Everything for you.
I want to thank the Stewart Family Foundation and Washington University Physicians for their support. Thank you for joining in with questions. If you want to see Stefan and Nikolai in concert, come see the Sibelius, hear the Sibelius Violin Concerto on November 6 and 7. And we talked about the concert of chamber music on November 5, and he'll be on the conductor's podium October 29 and 30. Visit slso.org for details. Mark your calendars. for the next Stories Live event on Wednesday, November 17. Check your email inbox. And now let's do the Zoom thing, friends, and say bye-bye. Bye.
Thank you.